Welcome to the Soul Power Experience. Activate your soul power, live your infinite greatness, be your own hero. This is session 10 of the Soul Power Experience. Nothing to forgive. First of all, let's talk about what forgiveness is not. Forgiveness is not to forgive and forget. So if we have an experience from the past that is causing present pain and a feeling of woundedness, then it is a present experience. And you know that in order to move on from this experience, you need to forgive. Once you forgive, if you think about this person or event and there's no pain associated with it, then you can see that it happened and it becomes a scar, something that happened in your past. And if an event becomes a scar, then you know you have forgiven. So you can't forget, the scar is still there, but you have forgiven, so there's no present pain. Forgiveness does not need to mean reconciliation. You forgive for your sake. Then you have boundaries to create safety. And if possible, you can reconcile if it's beneficial to you. So, in my experience, I had a family member who's not my husband or children accuse me of things for about 45 minutes. And another family was there to witness it, so I'm not making it up. And I thought this was very painful. And so I recounted it to people for about 9 months, just asking for prayer, saying it wasn't fair, um, still in pain about it. Then finally, I had the idea to call this family member and say, look, I will never be treated this way again. If you do this again, I will leave the room or hang up the phone. Okay? Okay. Then all of a sudden, I felt safe. And I realized I did not need to recount this for 9 months. I could have just made this phone call immediately and been over it, basically. And then it so happened that this family member called me a couple months later to say, you know, what I did was really wrong. And so she realized that she had been speaking out of her own perspective, kind of making up stories about me. And we were both at a better place for having gone through that experience. So forgiveness also is not excusing hurtful behavior. If a person or event hurt you, it really did happen. And it's okay to feel hurt once. But when you recount it over and over again, either in your mind or verbally, you are actually re-experiencing this event. And your body does not know the difference between you experiencing it and you recounting it. So all of the effects at a cellular level of this experience happen over and over again. So in my past, I have confronted others in tears with their grievances and the ways that I felt hurt. And then I realized that much or most of these stories were things that I made up in my own head. And my perceptions and emotions made life difficult for me and for others for many years. But now I no longer live that way. When I have a negative emotion toward anyone or anything, I completely own it and accept responsibility for it. and then pray about it and think about it and process it, and try to come up with the source. Where did this feeling come from? And then, of course, I apply the real life process. I feel the feeling, I bring it to my heart, and I apply love to the situation until I can come up with a better thought about it. And then I think about it spiritually in my crown center there, and try to think about it globally, like, in the history of the world, why has this happened, and what can I learn from it? And applying that process helps me come to my own higher truth, and so that I'm not making up stories that are causing me additional difficulties or those around me. So not forgiving also puts you in victim consciousness. When you feel like others have injured you, so you blame them over and over again. So forgiveness is becoming your own hero rather than a victim. Replaying events takes emotional energy. You have less energy for the future when you are focused on the past. So we want to heal the past, so that's no longer draining energy from our present moment or our future. So forgiveness is simply a change in perception. It's that easy. Forgiveness in Aramaic means to untie the knot. So everything is vibrational energy, physical matter, and even our emotions. So forgiveness releases a change in emotional, physical, mental, spiritual, and behavioral energy. This change in energy also releases the other person. So you know you're ready to forgive if you want to release a negative energy from you, and in so doing, release the other person. So if you still want the other person to suffer, then you know you're not ready to forgive. But if you're ready for this negative emotion to be released and release the person or event that caused it, then you know you're ready to forgive. So this other person does not need to know that you've been going through this forgiveness process on their behalf. You are just, loving yourself and loving them in the forgiveness process. So you may remember a story about me where, I grew up with a bipolar alcoholic mom, and I vowed not to be like her. So I didn't drink for years, and I don't drink now again. And in order to be the best mom that I could be to my children. So I was recounting to a friend of mine that I vowed, a practitioner actually, I vowed to never be like my mom. And she asked if I wanted to release that vow, and I said, sure, okay. So when I released that vow, I felt lighter, but I also literally felt my mom was somehow tied to me in an unhealthy way. And when I released that vow, she was released. I felt this release. And so she's able to move on in her life. I mean, she's in heaven, so however she's continuing to evolve at that level, I felt like she was released to do that because I had released her from this vow. And that was really my final work of forgiveness for the childhood that I experienced because of my mom. So that's what you can do for other people too. So we are going to go through 5 steps of a forgiveness process. This will also be in the guided meditation. So forgiveness first is just telling the story. It's okay to tell the story in the beginning of this forgiveness process, but I want you to tell it in a certain way, which is, my interpretation of this event is. So you're counting what you remember. It's your interpretation and perspective. So remember, this event happened once in a matter of minutes, and you've been recounting it year after year after year. So you no longer need to do that. So I used to be addicted to drama because of my chaotic childhood. When I realized that, I now release any sense of drama Any negative emotion, I'm working on getting rid of it because I'm actually now addicted to peace. Remember that Bible verse that God promises peace in all situations at all times. So that's how I want to live. All right, the second step is acknowledging that what I dislike in others, I dislike in myself. We need others to mirror our misperceptions and our projections. So we need to forgive ourselves. So this is how I realized this. I went to a session with Brenda Reese. Her last name is spelled Reiss, and she's a forgiveness coach. And on one sheet of paper, I was supposed to list all the things that bothered me about anyone. And then I turned to the next page, and she pointed out that these are all the things that bother me about myself. I had no idea. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, that's right. I had literally projected all of my dislikes on people around me. And so I realized I really need to own all of this. And so we need to acknowledge our dislikes and own them and not project them. And so we're going to be working on projection in our next session. It's all about projection. It's all just projection, actually, is the name of it. So we'll get a little deeper into that. So next, the third step is to release judgment. Everyone is doing the best they know to do. And you can also realize that you were drawn to this situation for the healing of your evolving soul. Remember, there's that Atman soul within you that's pure and holy and connected to God, sinless and beautiful. That's the eternal you. And then there's that Jiva part of your soul that suffers with you, that's kind of going through life with you. I mean, both souls are a part of you. It's kind of like two sides of the same coin, right? And so this part is the part that evolves and grows. And so we're really here to learn to receive and give love. That's the whole point of being here, and for our soul to continue to evolve into love. So, but in the meantime, we attract people who resonate with our issues so that we can heal our issues. Everything happens for us and not to us. And so I'm married to Kevin Green so that I can heal my issues. I've had children. My children help me heal my issues, and all the other people that are in my life. All right. It said that marriage is a mirror and children are a microscope. So it certainly tells us a lot about ourselves. All right. So the fourth point is to feel what you feel in your body. So when you're feeling this lack of forgiveness, you feel this emotion, where do you feel it in your body? And then you want to release this feeling outside of your body. And how do you sense it leaving? It could be vaporous, where it just disappears. It could be a block that you set outside of yourself. How do you perceive it leaving? Think about that. And then feel those feelings subsiding, feeling that space in your body that is no longer clogged up, tied up with that emotion. And then ask yourself, I would rather feel what? And then you think about a higher emotion that you would like to feel. So this is another kind of word picture of that same process. So imagine I'm holding on to an event or emotion tightly like this, like I'm holding on to this pen. That's what we've been doing when we don't forgive. Then we hold our hand open. And you see, when I hold my hand open, sorry, to space out the camera here, this pen just can roll around. This emotion could just roll around in my hand. I'm not as attached to it. Then I simply tip my hand and let it go. So that's what we can do when we forgive. It's just that easy. It's just a matter of changing our perception. Okay, the fifth step is to feel divine love surround the situation. So you evolve toward love in body, mind, spirit, and soul. You sense a higher emotion that you've just put in your body instead of the negative one, and a higher truth. So you ask yourself the question, my higher truth about this situation is, and sometimes it can come to you immediately, sometimes it might take weeks or months, but always know that once you're forgiven, a higher truth will come to you regarding this situation. So when we're really suffering, we assume that God has left us. I mean, haven't you asked this question like, God, where are you? I'm suffering down here. Give me some help. But actually, God has always been with you through every moment, every experience in your whole life. And I believe that God is closer still when we suffer, because then God knows that we really need God's help. So we are here to learn to love. Forgiveness helps us to be more loving toward ourselves and others and God. We are evolving toward love, and that's the whole point of being here. So here's an example of one of my clients. So my client experienced child abuse when she was 7 with her step grandfather. And she didn't tell anyone until after he died. So she was 35 when she began dealing with this situation. She came to me 20 years later when she was 55. She called me up and said, look, I've been abused as a child. Can you help me? And of course I said yes. And I said yes because not only do I believe in what I do, but I could sense her urgency, that she really wanted help and she really wanted it to get over it. So I knew together we would be successful. So she never really had to detail. I never really found out what happened or how many times it happened, just that it happened. So she wasn't having to go through, you know, the actual experience again. And in our 4th session, she was finally ready to get angry about it, and she swore and screamed and kicked. And I was able to guide her to put everything regarding this situation onto the man that did it. So all the guilt, shame, confusion, difficulty, everything that she experienced, she was able to give to him. So she no longer had any of it trapped anywhere in her body. And after that, in that same session, she said, I hope he learned his lesson. And then she said, did I just say hope? She was so surprised that she would even think of anything positive for this individual. But I knew that in that moment that she had forgiven, because she was hoping that this person had learned his lesson. So the next time she came back in her 5th session, I asked her, well, how's it going with that issue? And she says, oh, it's behind me now. And we were able to deal with more current issues in her life for the rest of our time together. So that's just one example of forgiveness. So you need to forgive yourself for your mistakes and your regrets. Regret is delayed enlightenment. So you've gone through your life doing the best you can with what you knew to do, with all the influences that are within you and outside of you. And regret is delayed enlightenment. Now you realize some truth about those issues and you kind of regret what you've done. But instead of regretting it, what you can do is realize the truth that you now know and apply it to that situation so you can move on and forgive yourself for your mistakes. Secondly, we need to forgive others. And really what's happened is that we have had expectations about how we should be treated by our parents, siblings, family members, friends, bosses, acquaintances. And when they don't meet those expectations and they treat us differently or less than, then we get hurt and have a hard time forgiving. But if we can understand that unmet expectations are premeditated disappointments, we've actually set ourselves up to feel disappointed when we have certain expectations for people. So what we can say is, I accept all people, are on their own path and timeline. So just let them be on their own path and you be on your own path, and just accept that. Now, the next person that we can forgive is God. Now, I said this once in church for communion. I was leading communion, and oh my goodness, did I get cornered in the church office between church services about saying forgiving God, because this person felt like God is perfect and we should never say that God does anything wrong. And so I was, obviously kind of upset because I was wondering, did I say that right? But anyway, I said it the same way for second service, because I really do believe that we need to forgive God for what God allows in our life. And since then, this forgiving God thing has come up several times, so I know I wasn't wrong in saying that. So that's why I want to point this out. And so we just have to trust that the divine presence in our life creates the highest and best for all of us. And a lot of people say there's kind of a blueprint or a divine plan for our lives. And I don't know, that to me is too restrictive, because you feel like, gosh, if there's a divine plan, I might miss it. So I say divine presence because I think that's one thing we can count on. And we'll learn in our 12th session on bliss about how we get to just kind of create our future. So the plan is whatever happens rather than something specific that's supposed to happen. But that's an entirely different subject. So let me move on. So we have nothing to forgive because everyone has emotional, environmental, generational, societal, physical, spiritual reasons, emotional reasons why they do what they do. Everyone is doing the best they know to do, and everything is happening for you and not to you. So we have nothing to forgive. We just have everything to release. And what about evil and suffering and war? Can we forgive? Yes, we can overcome everything because we can find a higher truth and we can choose love. So forgiveness is, I'm sorry, and I know you are sorry, because at a soul level, we really are sorry for what we have done. I forgive myself and I forgive you. I love myself and I love you. Then you can say, thank you for giving me the opportunity to heal. I experience love, joy, and peace. So to you, namaste. The divine in me celebrates the divine in you. We'll see you at our one-on-one session. I love you.